Hello there! How can you create a rock, paper, scissors game in Java? If you are watching this video, chances are that you are learning programming and you are looking for small projects to practice. In this video, I will show you how you can create a rock, paper, scissors game using object-oriented programming. So, object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm which basically means that we will decompose our program into a number of objects, each object representing an entity of our problem. Since there is no better way to learn than practicing, let's get started. In this case, we will be creating a rock, paper, scissors game. We will do this in Java step by step. So our game is gonna be a test-based game, meaning that we will interact with the game through the console. The tutorial is gonna be divided in 3 sections. In the first part, we will define how our rock, paper, scissors game will work. So that means that we will create use cases and UML diagrams to define and clarify what the game should do. So those will be our requirements. Once we have defined the requirements, we will start with the implementation. First, we will create a skeleton, meaning that we will create the classes and the interface that our game will need. But we won't write all the code here, so we will leave the classes and some of the methods empty. And we will complete them in the next step. This step is important because it helps you to start organizing your code. So rather than placing all your code in one big class, we will organize it logically in different classes. And last step, we will complete the implementation, meaning that we will add all the Java code that our program needs to work. Alright, so let's start with the first step, defining the rock, paper, scissors game requirements. So this means that we are gonna define how our game is gonna work. First step is writing down the steps describing what the game should do. This can help you identify the entities of our program and also the actions that we will need. The game starts by welcoming the user and display the options available, which are rock, paper, and scissors. Then the game requests the user to enter the option that they would like to play. At this point, the program waits for the user to enter his or her choice, and then the game picks randomly each choice out of the 3 possibilities, rock, paper, or scissors. Then the game will calculate the result, in other words, who won, and then the game will update the total score, and here the total score is going to keep track of 2 things: how many rounds were played and also how many times the user won. And the last step is asking the user if they would like to continue. So now that we have the steps and know what our program needs to do, let's see which are the main entities in our problem. So we have the game, we also have the user, then we have the available options the player can select, which are rock, paper, and scissors, and we also have the score. All these entities will be represented in our program as objects. Notice in our use case, I also mentioned actions like welcome the user or request the user to enter an option or pick something randomly or calculate the result and also display the score. These are all operations for which we will need to provide the code. So, initially our program will have 5 classes. One of the classes is called rock, paper, scissors game, which will be the entry point of our program. This class will contain the main method. Then another class named game controller which will represent the game itself. This class will contain the options selected by the user, also the mechanism to calculate who won, and other stuff. We will need another class to capture the options the user can select, which are rock, paper, and scissors. And we will call this class Game Options. We will have another class called Player, and this class will help us to indicate who won. And the possibilities are that the user won, that the machine won, or that it was a tie. And last, we will need another class to hold the score. And this class is gonna save two pieces of information. So one is the number of rounds in total, and also how many times the user won. So we will call this class a score. Perfect, so now that we understand the classes that we are going to need to implement our game, let's see how these classes will interact. So the entry point of the program is the class Rock, Paper, Scissors Game, which is a class that contains the main method. Then this class will create or instantiate a game controller class and call the method display welcome message. So this method will display the welcome message with the game instructions. Then the user will enter the option that she or he wants to select, and then we will call the save user selected option, which save the option that the user entered. Then we will call a method called pick random machine option, and this will randomly pick among rock, paper, and scissors. Then the game will compare the user choice and the machine choice and then work out the result, so who won. And finally our program will display the results. As you can see, now we have broken down our problem into smaller problems, and it's much clearer how our rock, paper, scissors game is going to work. Perfect, so let's start creating the skeleton for our program. Let's start with the most important class, the game controller. So I will create a class called game controller, and I'm going to add all methods that we mentioned earlier. First, a method that will return the welcome message. Then another method that returns the message that should be displayed to request the user to enter an option. So I'm going to call this method please enter option message. Then another method that will save the option selected by the user. So this method will save the choice in the class state and it doesn't return anything. Then another method so the machine picks randomly, and this method will return a game option type. Another method that works out who won, so let's call it calculate result, and it will return a player type. And last, a method that returns the results, so let's call it get results, and this will return a type score, which we are gonna define in a minute. Alright, so those are the key actions that our game is gonna need. However, we are missing a few classes. We will need a game option, which is a class that represents the game options. So those will be rock, paper, and scissors. Here note that it's a good idea that you include an empty option. Yes, so you can avoid null pointers. And each of these options is gonna have two fields, an identifier, which is just a number, and another number to specify what option win. So for example, the rock is number 1, and it can be won by number 2, which is the paper. Or another example will be paper, which is number 2, and it can only be won by number 3, which is paper. and so on with all the other options. So we are gonna need another method that, given the ID, returns the corresponding option. So for example, if we pass number 1, this method should return rock. I can do this using a loop and going through all the values and checking the ID. In case the ID doesn't match with any of the values, I will return empty. Remember, it's always better returning empty than returning null. Okay, so we created the class gain option, so we also need a class player. And this class is representing who won. So the options here are the user won, the machine won, or it was a tie. And we also need a class score. So this class is gonna store two things: how many rounds we play and how many times the user won. So those will be two numbers, so we will need two integers. And some useful things that we could do in this class are increasing the total number of times that we play and also increase the games that the user won. So we have defined all the classes that we need, so let's put everything together in the main method. So let's create the class rock, paper, scissors game, and let's add the main method, which is going to be the entry point of our program. So by this point we have complete creating the skeleton, and now we need to fill up all classes we created with the code. So our game starts working and we can play the rock, paper and scissors game. So first we will need to create an instance of the class game controller, so we can call all the methods that we created earlier. Then, since we are going to communicate with the user through the console, we need an scanner class. This class allows us to read anything the user types. So scanner equal new scanner. We said that we will ask the user if they want to exit, so we will need a variable to save the answer. Let's call it user wants to exit. Okay, so now the game is going to start. So we will display a welcome message. So system.out.print, and then we will call gameController and the welcome message method. We haven't write the code for this method yet, but we will do that in a minute. Now we are going to add a do-while loop, so the game keeps looping until the user indicates that he or she wants to exit. Now inside the loop, we will add the steps our game should perform in every round. First, we will display a message asking the user to enter his or her choice. So system.out.print and then gameController.please enter option. After this, we will read the option entered by the user using the scanner, so scanner.nextInt. The user will enter here a number corresponding to one of the options, which are rock, paper and scissors. So here we need to convert the number to a gain option. To do so, we will use the method value of we created earlier. So game option, user option equal to gain option dot value of. Next step is to save the option the user selected in the game. So we will call gameController dot save user choice, and this will save the option in the state of the game controller instance. Perfect, so at this point the user have entered the option that they want to play. So now the machine needs to pick what option is going to play. So we will use the gameController.randomMachineChoice, and this will return a gain option type containing rock, paper and scissors. We haven't write the code for any of these methods yet, but we will do this in a minute. In this class, we are coding the overall way in which the game is going to work. Once we have done that, we are going to fill up all the other methods. So let's continue. Now the choices are made, so we need to figure out who won. So we will call the method calculateResults of the game controller, and we will return a player type that will indicate if the user won or the machine won or if it was a tie. So now that we know who won, we can access the score by calling the getResult, which will return the score so we can display it in the console. And then we will show a message saying who played what and if the user has won. And then another message saying how many times the user won out of the total number of rounds. And finally, we will ask the user if they want to continue. And the possible options here are Y, meaning yes, continue, or N for no. Now we will read the letter that was typed through the scanner, then save it in a variable we created earlier, called user wants to exit. And then the loop here will check if the option entered by the user is the Y character. And if so, it will go back to the beginning of the loop and perform all the steps again until the user indicates that he or she wants to stop playing. And that's all for this class. Let's move on to the core class in our game, the game controller class. This class is going to keep track of three things: the choice made by the user, the choice made by the machine, and the total score. That means that we will need three fields in our class. First, we will add the user choice, which is of type gainOption, and then we will initialize it with empty. Then the machine choice, and then the total score field, which is going to be of type score. So these three fields is the information this class is going to hold. Alright, so let's start writing the code for the methods. The first method is the welcome message method, and all this method has to do is printing the message welcoming the user. Now the other method is the please enter option message. So this message here is going to show the user available options, which are rock, paper, and scissors, each with its corresponding number. So all this method has to do is returning a string with the message to display. Next method is the select user choice. This method will receive the option selected by the user and save it in the class state. So all it has to do is assigning the option to the class field user choice. This will save the user choice so we can access it later to work out the results. Perfect, so the next method now is the random machine choice method. This method is going to return one of the gain options randomly among rock, paper, and scissors. So first I will pick a number between 1 and 3 and then convert the number to a gain option. Would you like to try to write this method yourself? Cool! I will post the video here so you can try to write the code. Okay, so first I need to pick randomly a number between 1 and 3, both inclusive. And then I will use the value of method we created earlier to convert the number to a gain option. And now that we know the option selected by the machine, we just need to assign it to the field machine choice and return it. Remember, we are saving the options selected by the user and also by the machine, so we can access them later to work out who won the game. Alright, let's move on to the next method, calculate results. This method should do two things: update the score and return a player type indicating who won the game. I will post the video here so you can try to write the code for this method yourself. Alright, so first I will increment the game score using the total score field, and I will call the method to increment the total number of games played. Now let's work out who won. Let's start with the simplest case. The machine and the user chose the same option. In this case, we will return tie, and nobody wins. But what if it's not a tie? Remember that when we created the game option class, we created a field called win by? This field is indicating the option that will win a given option. So for instance, for the rock it was the paper, and for the paper it was the scissors, and so on. So now we are going to use that field to work out who won. So we will use the machine option and then access the win by attribute or field. And if this is equal to the user choice, then we know that the user won. So we need to increase the user counter and then return user. Otherwise, it means that the machine won, so we will return player.machine. Alright, so we got to the final method, the getResults method. So all this method needs to do is returning the results, which are in the score field. We do this so they can be displayed by the calling method. And that was the last bit. We just complete our rock, paper, scissors game. Amazing job. Let's run it now and see if it works. So I will run the rock, paper, scissors game class, which is the one that contains the main method. And as you can see, the game displays the welcome message and then requests us to enter rock, paper, or scissors. I'm going to select one, rock, and then the machine will play paper. So I lost this one. And I will press Y to continue. And this time I'm going to play paper. And the machine play paper, so it was a tie. So I will press continue. And I'm going to play scissors. And the machine plays scissors as well, so it's a tie game. Alright, so this is the end of the tutorial where you learn how to create a rock, paper, scissors game in Java from scratch. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I will see you in the next one.